I got into music like really young. I've been singing and doing theater and that sort of thing since I was like 5. And I started professionally singing when I was 16. And in the middle of going to college, like I started working on a demo. And that was when it was clear that this wasn't going to be one of those situations where you just go and you get a record deal and everything's great. Like, we started getting a lot of questions about, okay, well, we have to try to figure out how to find songs for someone like her, or we just have to figure out how to make her relatable to the audience and that sort of thing. The first single came out in 2007. It was a song called Country Girl, and I was the first black woman at that point to be on the country charts in 20 years. After just feeling like a lot of things were mismanaged, and I didn't like the way that I was being treated or the way that I was being branded, I made a very tough decision to leave the record label. And so it turned into a legal battle. And I ended up having to file bankruptcy in the middle of all this because I couldn't do shows, I couldn't play, I couldn't do anything. And I just was like, I think it's over there. I think that chapter of my life is over. And like, for a really long time, I had to deal with that. Like, I had to deal with the rejection and what that felt like. And, you know, thank God the Triangle is the way it is as far as being like this really great, it's kind of like an artist oasis a little bit. I had no idea. And so when I got here, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do in North Carolina? And, and I'm so glad that I was wrong. And I think that I've become more creative here. And I think people have an awareness of community. Like, especially here in Durham, more so than anywhere else I've ever lived. I've lived in New York, I've lived in Atlanta, I've lived in Nashville. This is the most community that I've ever felt anywhere. And people really care about the city. People really care about the people in this city. And it rubs off. And you can't help but feel that way. And so, yeah, I'm more in tune with what goes on here than I have anywhere else I've ever lived. What is it like? How does that sit with you?
It's truly surreal because I've listened to Charlie Pride since I was a kid. You know, one of when I was a little kid in the early
A very good friend of mine, had been telling me for years that she thought that I should do like a podcast or something. And so I started thinking about, well, what would I talk about? And so I was like, I'll talk about my journey in country music as a person of color. And last year also coincided with the 50th anniversary of the album Color Me Country by Linda Martell, who's the first black woman to ever play the Grand Ole Opry. And I call her like she's like the patron saint of the show. And last year at the beginning of the quarantine, I just started calling my friends because I knew everybody was going to be home, and started recording these interviews. And you know, I had no idea that everything was going to happen that happened, and the summer that we had. And the show just kind of took on a life of its own. And Color Me Country Radio with Rissi Palmer on Apple Music was born from that moment. I wanted to give artists space to say whatever. And that means if you just want to talk about your music, then we'll just talk about your music. But if you want to talk about this really crappy thing that happened to you when you went to a radio station, or this horrible thing that was said to you at a record company meeting or something like that, like, you have the space to do that. Because of the safe space, you can talk about microaggressions. You can talk about rejection. You can talk about the way it feels looking out and you being the only person that looks like you in the entire theater or the entire arena, wherever you're playing. And, you know, things that happen in the writer's room. It's been healing for me as an artist and just as a person, because I hear these stories and I'm like, damn, okay, it wasn't just me.
Possibly armed. Code 3.
Brothers and sisters, don't believe what you've been sold. They can.
I definitely am experiencing a second act right now, and I feel very thankful. My latest album was released in 2019. There's an album called Revival. It's very personal. I wrote a lot about what was going on in the world, what was going on in my home. With the show, I've been able to do a lot of other things musically because people are like, oh, she sings. So it's a really weird, it's a really great and interesting time. Like I got to play the Grand Ole Opry last week for the first time in like 13 years. And it's pretty amazing. And none of that would have happened had I not done the show. So it's amazing how taking a detour, or what seems like a detour, will bring you right back home. Lord, playing the Grand Ole Opry after 13 years felt like playing it for the first time. In that I was so nervous. But it was amazing. It was great. And it was great to go back with purpose. Because I think the first time, I was so focused, I was young, and I was so focused on being Rissi Palmer and like the glamour and all that and the fame and all that. And this time it's like you represent something. I'm representing artists that aren't going to get this opportunity. I'm going for all the artists that I've talked to that were rejected or had their dreams squashed simply because of the way they looked. I sang Somerville, which is about my family in the small town in Georgia where my mother is from and where I started singing. And then I did Seeds, which is from Revival, and I wrote that about the uprisings in Ferguson, Missouri after the murder of Michael Brown. And then I sang a Linda Martell song because shortly after Linda did the Grand Ole Opry and did all these things, she was blacklisted and never made another album. And she now lives in South Carolina and has not done music in years because of the way she was treated. So I went on a mission to represent all those people and to talk about all those things. And so it was a very loaded 3-song performance.